The MLB GM meetings start today in Las Vegas, and I'm going to tell you what exactly that you should be expecting from these meetings. And guys, there's going to be a lot of rumors.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And yes, we are the Locked On Nationals podcast, where we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in America. But later on in today's program, we'll be discussing James Wood, as he was a Silver Slugger finalist, did not win the award. Let's talk about who won the award and kind of how James Wood stacks up against some of those winners later on in today's program. And in the second segment, someone asked me the other day about Josiah Gray, and we have not talked about Josiah Gray, the 2023 All-Star for the Washington Nationals. What role will he have, and kind of what is the Nationals' goal when it comes to developing Josiah Gray? Let's kind of tap into that in the second segment of today's program. But we start off discussing the GM meetings, as Paul Toboni, the first time running the baseball operations for a major league team, will be representing the Washington Nationals. And there is a lot to expect from these meetings, including some trade talks. I'll tell you more about that, but today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So we get into it with Paul Toboni, representing the Washington Nationals today, laying the groundwork for what could be a very active offseason for the Washington Nationals. So the GM meetings, first and foremost, just to kind of paint with the broad brush here, this is a lot of the times where GMs can finally get together under one roof. All 30 MLB GMs and top decision makers will be in attendance for these meetings. And just kind of what happens here is you figure out like what guys could be available in free agency and kind of learning the different backgrounds of how maybe another organization does it. Like, there are a lot of different things that could go on with this. And I think a lot of different things will affect how Toboni will kind of run this Nationals offseason. So the number one thing that I think a lot of Nationals fans should be watching for is laying the groundwork for a MacKenzie Gore trade. This is now the time where it's not going to be Paul Toboni going to GM saying like, hey, MacKenzie Gore is available. There are going to be GMs from the Boston Red Sox, from the Chicago Cubs, from teams like the Tigers, the Blue Jays, teams that are ready to win now and who have the ability to control MacKenzie Gore and want to and can trade for him. They will be discussing trade work with MacKenzie Gore with Paul Toboni. I think that that is going to be a huge topic of discussion over these next few days. I've said that I think MacKenzie Gore does get traded. I think it's the correct thing to do. I think it makes sense. And I also think the market will allow us to get a really good return. But with that in mind, Paul Toboni is still going to have to say yes to that. And if Paul Toboni, if he believes that this is a team that is potentially ready to win in the next 2 years, then you probably hold on to MacKenzie Gore. And maybe the offseason of 2027 with the impending lockout completely changes the way that this offseason is. Like, maybe that changes the way that owners spend. Maybe they want to spend even more money. Maybe they want to spend even less. Maybe it changes the way that executives think down the road. Like, this is a tricky offseason, a tricky one to navigate because there's an impending lockout happening. Like, it's going to happen. Everybody knows that it's going to happen. But how will that affect this offseason? I think that is probably the biggest question that might get answered for some GMs at these meetings here, and just kind of get a feel of, oh yeah, we're going to probably offer this guy in that area, like a $400 million deal, or we're going to go after this guy, or we're going to trade for this guy because he's got X amount of years left. Those are the kind of conversations that will be happening. But for Nationals fans, the two top things that you will have to monitor is a MacKenzie Gore trade and a CJ Abrams trade. I do believe that right now there's obviously a lot of smoke regarding a MacKenzie Gore deal. And I think for all the right reasons. Like, we have discussed that ad nauseum here. But then you get to a CJ Abrams deal, someone who is a franchise shortstop in some cases, who might be a second baseman down the road, someone who has shown the ability to be a great all-star potential kind of player here, but also hasn't necessarily put it together for a complete 162 game season. That's the kind of thing I think a lot of Nationals fans will be looking for. But you will be seeing these trade rumors pop up, because this is the big story surrounding the Washington Nationals. This is going to be executives from other teams going to Toboni and say, hey, welcome to DC, but also, are your two All-Stars available? That will be the hot topic, in my opinion, as far as the Nationals go. And I think over these next few days, with guys like Jeff Passan there, Bob Nightingale, John Heyman, I'm sure, you will see a lot of different rumors. You will see a lot of different reports out there of MacKenzie Gore has been made available for trade, or CJ Abrams has been someone that a lot of teams have been asking around about, or maybe it's Luis Garcia Jr., or maybe it's another starting pitcher, or maybe it's the Nationals. And that could certainly be in play here for the Nats. I think that the Nats story is going to be MacKenzie Gore and his trade market. That'll be the number one story for the Nationals. I would also not be surprised to see the Nats somehow, some way, go out there and try to make trades in order to get talent in this building. And it's not going to be of trading like a Luis Garcia Jr. It might be in that case, but who knows what happens with him in the future. This also could be kind of in this. And Paul Toboni sees a couple of guys who maybe were in favor under Mike Rizzo, who he doesn't really see a long-term future with, and he packages some prospects together to get some more in the building that might fit this new Toboni data-driven organization. Those are the kind of moves I think really could be happening over these next couple of days here. And as these things trickle out, this kind of lays the groundwork for what to expect this offseason. These next few days will be very, very important for the Washington Nationals because, number one, you have got your new decision maker with Paul Toboni. He's got a lot of things to answer this offseason. The first things first being MacKenzie Gore and what you do with him. Secondly, what do you do with CJ Abrams? And then if you do decide to move off of one of them or none of them or both of them, you're going to have to answer this fan base in a way that I don't really necessarily think that he is ready to do at this point. And it's not to say that he's not ready to be a top executive, but the Nationals fan base can be loud at times. And as we've traded away talent in years past, you guys have not been happy. I get it. I understand it. It's hard to wrap around how your team could be better by trading away one of your better pitchers. That doesn't necessarily make sense in trying to get your team in a better spot. But also, it does. It does make you better, and it can make you better, and it can, in some cases, make you a heck of a lot better. So that's a different discussion for a different day, but the way that Toboni is going to have to navigate this offseason, like, here's my thing. I think he comes in with a hammer. That's an option number one, meaning he is going to come in and make a ton of changes. We have already seen it. A few weeks ago, when Paul Toboni's one of his first few weeks, I believe Spencer Nussbaum or Andrew Golden of the Washington Post got a text from someone within the organization. They said it's a bloodbath as he was letting people go here because he was making all sorts of changes, which is what you would expect from a new president of baseball ops here in town. Secondary, what do the Nationals do in an offseason with guys that are completely new with the Washington Nationals? You've got Mike DeBartolo, who's now the assistant GM and senior vice president here in town, who's basically your de facto GM. But other than that, there is nobody in this organization that could be safe. And that goes for the players as well. I think that right now, my big take surrounding these GM meetings coming to town here is that you will see a ton of trade rumors with the Nationals. I think that right now, MacKenzie Gore, That's going to be a lock. You'll see a Jeff Passan report or a Jeff Passan story or a Ken Rosenthal story over these next few days regarding potential suitors and what packages could look like from them. You will see trade discussions surrounding CJ Abrams. You'll see trade discussions surrounding prospects maybe here locally. You'll hear about Brady House and the way that he's going to develop. Like, you will hear a ton of different rumors over these next few days as the GM meetings get started today. So do not be surprised. Shakeups are coming. And as we expect, Paul Toboni is going to be making some big changes. And it all starts today here at the GM meeting. So stay tuned for that. We'll have all the stories and all the different rumors coming out of these in Las Vegas all week long. So stay tuned right here to Locked On Nationals. But next, I want to get into Josiah Gray. Josiah Gray is someone that I think is going to be a very, very kind of weird case to monitor this season because he's coming off Tommy John surgery. He is good. He was an all-star, but how good can he be? And what is the exact dream of Josiah Gray? And what does he have to do to get there? We'll tell you all about that and answer those questions after this. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. And plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, and especially when your team's making that late push, it makes it so much fun. So the Wizards have lost like 6 straight games. Here's what you got to do to make those games a little more fun. You bet the over on those games as always, but you also bet the over on Alex Sarr points. He's having his breakout season in the second year. I think he'll take another step up as the season goes on. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And we're back here on Locked On Nationals. Later on in the show today, though, I do want to get into James Wood, as he was a finalist for the Silver Slugger Award, but as expected, did not win the Silver Slugger. And of course, did not even finish inside the top 3. So we'll discuss some of those people and who was in that discussion later on in the program today. But Josiah Gray, this is one of those very weird topics of conversation because I think a lot of people have very high expectations for Josiah Gray, reasonably slow. So he's a former All-Star, but also we have to remember this. Josiah Gray will be a very intriguing guy to watch. And I think that right now the expectations for him might be a little too high. I like Josiah Gray, but I also think the realistic best case scenario for him on a winning baseball team is that this guy is going to be a 4 or 5 starter on a good rotation. I don't see a world of Josiah Gray being this top dog, like absolute monster for the Nationals. I just don't see it. And I don't see it for an organization run by people that is very driven with data and analytics. But also, here's the good news about Gray, is that he did have a really good year in 2023. Having a sub-4 ERA here in town, like, forget about all the other metrics and the fact that he led Major League Baseball in like home runs given up. Like, he was getting crushed and crushed and crushed a lot of different times here. But forget the fact that this is someone who, obviously, we have seen some really good moments here at times, but also doesn't necessarily have the best stuff. I think the best thing going for Josiah Gray is that he's got this pitch mix that is really just insane at this point. He has a slider that he threw for 24% of the time back in 2023. He had a sinker that he threw for 20% of the time. He had a curveball he threw 16% of the time. His fastball that he threw 15% of his time. Like, this is someone who has such a deep arsenal that it's like, how can this guy not work out? And by the way, he's got a sweeper and he's got a changeup as well. He's like, the stuff that he throws is absurd to me. He literally has 7 different pitches that he has thrown over the course of his career. So the potential is there. Like, there is no doubting that. But also, I think that in the best world, you are hoping that he turns out to be a good 4-starter for this team, maybe a 3. I think right now, the way that this rotation stacks up is this. MacKenzie Gore is your opening day number 1, followed by Cade Cavalli. I think DJ Hers is your number 3. And then I think that's when you get into Josiah Gray there at 4. And then the number 5 guy is like Trevor Williams and or Jake Irvin and or Andrew Alvarez and or Mitchell Parker. And maybe someone who comes up like a Jake Bennett sometime this season in 2026. That's kind of what you have to expect. I think in some cases, like guys like Mitchell Parker, you could move him to the bullpen. I think Jake Irvin, you could potentially move him to the bullpen, or maybe you trade him elsewhere. I think Andrew Alvarez could be a long reliever kind of guy. Brad Lord, how does he fit in that equation? Is he seen as a starter? Is he seen as a fireman out of the bullpen? How do they view him? Like, these are the conversations that we have to have. I know they view MacKenzie Gore as a stud. I know they view Cade Cavalli as a potential to be a good starting pitcher. I think that they think that DJ Hers is a good starting pitcher. Outside of that, Josiah Gray fits in as that number 4 guy for this team. But even then, with this rotation, with Josiah Gray coming back in, I don't think it takes that next step forward. Like, I do think it solves some of your issues with some inconsistencies surrounding a Mitchell Parker and or a Jake Irvin. But still, Josiah Gray is not going to take you from point A to point B the way that we would some think in that case. I like him a lot. But also that beginning of 2024, right before he got Tommy John surgery, like, he had some really rough starts. And even in 2023, he went through a really tough stretch there. In the first half, he was really good, but a lot of Nationals pitchers, as we have seen, as they kind of got deeper into the seasons, you saw a lot of different flaws. And I like Josiah Gray. Like, again, in 30 starts back in 2023, he had a 3.91 ERA. But also in that time frame, had a 1.46 whip. And if you look in 2022, when he had a 5 ERA, he had a 1.36 whip. He pitched more innings in 2023 compared to 2022. But really, the numbers and the way that they stack up, it's not that much better. In fact, the only thing that was really different for Josiah Gray was the fact that he had better defense in 2023 when he was an all-star. So I think that right now, the conversations surrounding Josiah Gray, they are good ones to have, I guess. But also, the way that he is going to affect this rotation, he's not going to take it from this bad rotation into a solid one. He's not going to make this from a bad rotation into an even average one. I think the best case scenario for Josiah at this point is that he fills in that 4 or 5 starter role, and then I think we go from there. We have talked a lot about Paul Toboni and the way that he can kind of change the story surrounding a lot of different players. Like, I think Seaver King has a great chance of developing now. I think there's a lot of guys like Jake Bennett out there. I think he's in favor in this new system. And Josiah Gray kind of fits that mold here because he's got that pitch mix where it's like, okay, you can do something here. And he's had a lot of success over the years, especially with his slider and with his sinker at times. His fastball has really gotten hitting over the years. That's something of real concern right now because that was kind of his bread and butter coming up through the Dodger system here. But I think going forward, the discussion surrounding Gray, we need to temper our expectations. This is not going to change the way that the Nationals line up the rotation every week. This is not going to change the fact that this rotation is one of the worst in all of baseball. Like, this will help. It will be a positive because I do think you get some of the negatives out of it. But also, this is not going to fix too much. So the expectations and kind of the role that Josiah Gray will have, it's going to be dependent on the way that Paul Toboni views him, obviously. But secondary to that, his stuff at his peak is not going to take you over that hump because the numbers, while they were improved in 2023, you have to really dig back and remember that there were actually a lot of people concerned about Josiah Gray, the way that he was walking people, the home runs that he was giving up. And while he did make some jumps and did improve in some areas, none of that was really just voided, because there are some numbers that you can read between the lines and say, yeah, there have been some real issues with Gray here, especially back in 2023 and in 2022. So there's a lot of different things that you got to kind of talk about here at the Washington Nationals. But right now, Josiah Gray, he's going to be a plus addition. And I do think that he will help us, obviously, but it may not be to that extent that a lot of people expect. So stay tuned for a discussion surrounding Josiah Gray as the week goes on. But next, let's get into James Wood, because James Wood was an all-star, or was a Silver Slugger finalist rather, and he did not win the award. But still, how does he stack up against some of those winners? We'll tell you all about that after this. NFL season is back, and honestly, there is nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating, and that is why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. And Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price that you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games like the Commanders and the Lions as low as $100. The app is made so easy to use, and it's super simple. I can even see the exact view from my seat before buying, because at Northwest Stadium, for a lot of, as Lions fans found out yesterday, there's a lot of obstructed views there, but Game Time can save you that, because they let you know, they give you an alert if there is any obstruction. And also, you're going to see the view for yourself from your phone. So when you're taking on that NFL game, you can make it better for yourself. And honestly, it's also faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I have bought tickets. So download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And we're back here on Locked On Nationals, as James Wood was a Silver Slugger finalist, but did not ultimately win the award. And I think that this was the expectation, but he was named a Silver Slugger finalist, which I think in his first full season in itself, like, we will take that each and every single day of the week. But James Wood, and the way that his numbers stacked up against some of these hitters, I thought was really compelling into just the kind of season that he had. And Andrew Golden of the Washington Post kind of compared some of these numbers, and he tweeted this out yesterday. So obviously Kyle Tucker and Corbin Carroll and what they did this season was astounding for the Chicago Cubs and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Well, James Wood, number one, played more games than both those guys. He had more plate appearances, and he also had more hits in that department, and also hit as many home runs as Corbin Carroll, but actually had 9 more home runs than Kyle Tucker as well. And I thought that James Wood, obviously in the first half of the season, like, we were talking about a real 100% shot at winning a Silver Slugger this year, ultimately was not able to pull through there, could not get the ultimate Silver Slugger, but he did stack up really well. And I think that right now with Nationals fans, the fact that your young superstar is in the conversation in a very good National League, especially talking about outfielders, that is such a win in itself. In this season, in his first full campaign as a big leaguer, this guy has put himself in a conversation to be amongst the elite of the elite. I love James Wood. The fact that there's not many people out there, but the fact that people were really worried about the strikeouts and all the different things that happened in the second half, like, yes, it's not something that I'm like, oh, that was a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing, if anything. But that's what happens when you're a young player. James Wood is, I say this confidently too, he is going to be one of the better hitters in the NL East within the next couple of years. I can say that with 100% confidence, and I truly do believe in that. I think that he could put up all-star numbers easily next season. I think that some days down the road, he will be in the MVP conversation. That's truly how good I think James Wood is. And by the way, he's doing this while also getting a lot better defensively in left field. So James Wood did not win the award, but he was in the conversation, did not finish in the top 3, but still, James Wood, that guy's a star. And you should be happy that you get to watch him every single day right here with the Washington Nationals. So thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.